So, welcome everyone to Sheffield, to the University of Sheffield, to the Information School. This is our open day. We're hoping going to have a chance to find out more about the school. I'm going to say a little bit about studying here as a PhD student, but we'll also have plenty of opportunity for you to ask questions. So we're going to have a Q&A later on, but you can, anytime you want to ask any questions, just write it in the chat box. So I'm Andrew Cox, a lecturer here in the department, and I'll just introduce my colleagues.
Hello, I'm Titima. I'm a fourth-year PhD student of the Information School.
Hi, I'm Jess. I'm a third-year PhD student in the Information School.
Okay, so I'm just going to say a little bit of background to give you a kind of flavour of what it's like to study here, and then Jess and Titima will say a bit about their own experiences, and then maybe I'll try and summarise a few ideas about how to put together a good proposal to come and study in Sheffield. So I guess we're trying to summarise why you would want to come to Sheffield to study a PhD here in the Information School. So came up with 7 really good reasons to do that. So the first one is, I suppose we are one of the world's leading and certainly the UK top information schools. So if you want to study in this subject area, this is the place to come. We've also got a wide range of supervisors who have kind of worldwide reputations in their subject areas, and they've got a wide, broad range of subject knowledge. So more or less, whatever your subject in the information area is, we can probably find you a good supervisory team to support you in your studies. The PhD in the UK tends to be more or less research driven. It's not a taught course. So really a lot of the time what you're doing is basically working with the supervisor, and hopefully all our students have 2 supervisors, so a supervisory team. You're also joining, when you come here, a community of researchers. So we've got staff, research students and research assistants and associates working on different projects, and we're inviting you to come and participate in that community, a supportive community where you can share your ideas, learn a lot from other people, learn a lot from other students. That's a key part of your learning. We're trying to give you all the facilities you need to do your research. So you'll have your own working space. Later on we'll have a kind of little mini tour, and you'll be able to see that space, the type of space you'd have. You have your own laptop. You can get your own specialist software installed as well. And we've got a really good dedicated team of IT support who will kind of help you fix your own laptop as well as the one provided by the department. And we've got dedicated administrative support as well to help you with filling in all the forms that inevitably come with kind of studying. Sheffield's really good for information resources. The university spends millions of pounds every year on library resources, and they've got some really up-to-date learning spaces, such as in the new Diamond building, which costs over £50 million to build. It's fantastic. Landmark building in the university, and a great place to study as well as your space in the department. And I suppose above all, Sheffield's a really nice city to live in. It's a kind of friendly sort of place, pretty safe compared to other big cities, and it's very green. It's surrounded by nice countryside. There's the opportunity to go out and do sport and visit the Peak District, which is a nice kind of quiet area of countryside around the city. So all in all, we think those are the 7 reasons to come here. Let's say a bit about motivation to do a PhD. I think there are lots of reasons why you might be thinking about a PhD, and I'm just kind of perhaps helping to articulate which of these that resonate with your own feeling about why you really want to do a PhD. So it's a way to contribute to the world's knowledge, to publish ideas that other people will read and be influenced by, and hopefully cite your work. But it's also a kind of the ultimate learning challenge. you probably got a master's degree, you probably enjoyed doing your first degree, but here, doing a PhD over 3 years is like the ultimate challenge of learning about a subject in great depth. And I guess underlying that is the idea of taking forward new knowledge, but challenging your own assumptions too. So it's a life-changing experience, I would say. You'll learn how to do research and how to do different research methods, but how to design research from the beginning to the end. And that's not just useful if you want to be an academic and do research in the future. It's also really useful skill in the modern world, because all the problems, I suppose, that we encounter in professional life are becoming more and more complicated, and increasingly any form of practice involves looking at investigating in some depth the context in which you're working. So research skills are becoming core skills for all practitioners as well as for researchers. I think my experience of doing a PhD was, wow, this is a great period when I could spend 3 years just focusing on something that really interested me, developing my own understanding. It's kind of a really rich experience in that sense. You may go on to do more research, but maybe you'll never have that huge time of space to pursue your own ideas in quite the same way. So that's a really nice part of doing a PhD, very rewarding. Another really important thing is the friends you'll make, the community of other researchers you'll join. That is a really valuable thing to your researchers, I'm sure Titima and Jess will say. But to me, yes, talking to other students, learning from other people, making friends who are very supportive, create a supportive environment for you, that's a really important part of being a PhD. You'll also, hopefully, within the school, work with supervisors who are world-leading researchers, but you also get a chance to maybe go to conferences and meet other people who are leaders in your field. I remember that was important to me, to go to conferences and see these people who have been writing the works I've been reading and citing, and were important to me in my understanding of my subject. And those people have really started to really change the world. It's your chance to participate in that process of forwarding the world's knowledge and changing the world for the better. And ultimately, I suppose you'll learn how to be a good researcher, and also how to be a good academic as a whole and a lecturer. I just wanted to, before we pass on to what Titima and Jess want to say, I just want to say a bit about what I think, hopefully, through doing a PhD, you can aspire to become. I think it's about changing who you are at some level through doing a PhD. So I think at the end of the process, certainly, you'll have come to really love your subject, have a real passion for that subject. You've also developed the kind of, should we say, determination to forge through any problems that you encounter, and the kind of stamina to maintain your energy about that research project. You'll have to be well organised, but I think it'll also change you to be more thoughtful. You'll be a better read person, be able to bring in theories to other things you do in the future. You'll know how to do good research and follow good practice, follow good ethical practice in doing research. The ethics side of research is really important in Sheffield. And also how to make a research transparent to others, how you've taken appropriate steps to do research and followed a rational course in setting out how to do research. That's an important skill. I think you'll also find yourself writing more and more. Perhaps you'll be writing every day to communicate with your supervisor and through your results to the rest of the world. And you'll learn to communicate very effectively with that supervisory team, to be able to say, you know, I'm struggling, or I've got a problem here, and how can you help me? To sort of manage that relationship becomes quite important. So that was just a little bit of an introduction. I'm now going to, I think, just pass over to Emma to say a bit about her experience.
Thank you. I'm Titima. I'm a first-year PhD student of the Information School. I would like to share my experience about doing a PhD in the Information School. So first of all, I would like to tell you a little bit about my research project. I'm doing a research project about knowledge management between the members from different disciplines to develop the framework for managing knowledge across boundaries. So this is my the final years. These slides, I try to summarize some major difference between doing a master and a PhD studies. For the PhD study, it normally requires about 3 to 4 years to complete the degree, but it's depending on the progress of their student project. But for the master study, it requires about 1 year to complete the degree. For the PhD, the study is mainly focused on doing research in your research topic. In your research topic to practice your research skills for your research-oriented career, such as being a lecturer or being a researcher, and especially to create new knowledge in your field. But for a master study, it's mainly focused on coursework to practice you to use the knowledge and theory in the existing literature and apply it in the different contexts to prepare you for your career-oriented. For my experience, doing a PhD in the information school is very good opportunity, and it is very nice because the information school have many lecturers. They are experts in many fields, such as in the knowledge and information management, in digital library, information retrieval, bibliometrics, something like that. And the school also provides some money for the student to present their research project in the conference. So this is a good chance for the student to share their project with the other researcher and in the communities, so you can get more feedback to develop your research project. Also, the university and the school provide some seminar and workshop to practice about your research skill, including other skills that you can use after you finish the degree. So I think it is very good chance to do the PhD in the information school and in University of Sheffield. I have a story to tell you about doing a PhD for my experience. In one night beach, there are many boats, and each boat has many passengers who are the PhD students. These boats will bring the student to explore the sea and to find out the treasure. So the student who can find out this treasure will be taken back to the seashore and then get the rewards. But before joining in this trip, in this journey, the PhD students have to submit their application and their proposal, and they have to be interviewed by the committees. And it's not every student or it's not every applicant pass this process. In doing to find out the treasure in this journey, the students have 3 to 4 years to dive in the deep and the dark sea to find out the treasure. The supervisor will advise the student how to find out the treasure, how to dive in the dark and the deep sea. But you know, it's not easy to find out the treasure in the dark and the deep sea that you have never been before, because they have many storms and a challenge that I try to refer to the challenge for doing a PhD. There are the intellectual challenge and there are emotional challenge. For the intellectual challenge, such as about the complexity and novelties in your research topic, a research methodology and research skill, about the time management, about the English skill, especially academic writing. You have to read many papers, and you have to write a lot of the document for your supervisor and to present your idea. All intellectual challenge may make you feel tired, upset, and you want to stop and you want to stop to doing a PhD, but you have to find out the proper way to manage and cope with these challenges. But you know, every time that you try to dive in the dark and the deep sea, you are building your muscle and you are getting stronger. So, from my experience, the treasure and the rewards are not the most important thing in this long journey, in this 3 to 4 years for doing a PhD. The knowledge, experience about the dive in the dark and the deep sea is not the most important thing in this journey, including the beautiful of the dark and the deep sea. So from my experience, before you're starting to do a PhD, there are some questions that you should ask yourself first, such as about your motivation for doing a PhD, about your knowledge background, about your readiness, because all of these questions will reflect your motivation. If you have a strong and clear motivation to doing a PhD, it will help you to manage and cope with the challenge that I have just said to you. Thank you. So then I will pass to Jess.
Hi, I'm Jess. So my PhD research is a case study of ESOL learners. ESOL learners are migrants learning English in community settings. And I'm looking at how they share information in the classroom and the impact it has on their life. I've just chosen a few pictures from my research to give you an idea of what my PhD is like. I think every PhD is a personal experience, so this is just what it was like for me. This is me during some of my data collection. So as part of my research, I went on trips with some of my participants and we had a lot of fun and a really good time. And I think at the heart of my PhD for me is that I really, really love my research. I find my topic endlessly fascinating. I think it's much more interesting than anybody else's PhD topic, which I think probably every PhD student secretly thinks, although we don't normally say it out loud. So I think if you are interested in doing a PhD, you need to have something that you are interested in that will keep you interested for 3 years or even for 4 years. Because if you're doing a PhD, you will spend a lot of time somewhere like this. This is my fairly untidy desk in one of our offices. And you have to be able to spend a lot of time sitting by yourself, working by yourself, sometimes struggling by yourself, sometimes having fantastic ideas. But it can be a lonely experience because most of the places you work, you'll probably be working more with other people than you will do during the PhD. So you have to have the stamina and the curiosity to sit there and keep going. Although the other side of it is as Andrew said, that you are part of a research community. So this is me, my supervisor, and another PhD student at a conference we went to in Estonia. So when you join the information school as a PhD student, you become part of a research community. And I think you're welcomed as part of that research community. Most supervisors like their PhD students and enjoy spending time with them, so you'll build up a very good research relationship. There are also different reading groups, research groups, seminars that you can go to, and that is a really valuable chance that you can become part of that research community. The next slide this is an activity I did with some of my participants where we were all blindfolded and we had a little machine that would tell you what colour socks were, and so we were blindfolded and we had to work together to try and put these socks in pairs. And I think this can be a metaphor for a PhD, if you like, because a lot of the time you're not really sure what you're doing, you're fumbling around in the dark trying to work out what's going on, but in the end you do match the socks and you do put the red ones with the blue ones and the green ones with the red ones with the red ones, yes. And the green ones with the green ones. So when I first started my PhD, I was talking to someone and I said, well, I don't really know what I'm doing. And he said, well, if you knew what you were doing, there'd be no point in doing it, because as part of a PhD you're making new knowledge and it has to be hard to make new knowledge. So that kind of leads on to the next slide, which is the difficulties of doing a PhD. So I think it's important to emphasise that PhDs are enjoyable and they are fun, but you will have difficulties. So for me, I have a family, I have a son, I have a life, and it's the difficulty in being able to manage your life, with your work, and it's keeping things in proportion. But it is possible. It is possible. So I think good time management for me is probably one of the main things that keeps me going through my PhD. And the final slide is this. I imagine all these pots to be little PhD students growing into researchers, because I think when you're doing a PhD, you're doing a project and you're working on your project, but you are also learning to be a researcher. And it's important to keep both those goals in mind, because I think probably one of the most valuable outputs is that by the end of it you will be a researcher. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So I just thought I would close this presentation part of the open day by saying a bit about how to apply and application tips. But it's worth saying, hopefully you've really been thinking about doing a PhD for a long time, and my experience was really that I thought about it for many, many years, but in the end the decision was really forced on me. And I realised actually I should have tried to do it earlier. And there are a lot of obstacles, there's challenges of doing an application and so forth. But actually I think, if you want to do it, you will find a way to do it. And particularly in relation to having an idea, sometimes I think we give the impression you've got to have this brilliant original idea of what research you're going to do from the very beginning, but that's not really very realistic. It's more like you've got an area that's of interest to you and you're prepared to work on developing it over time. And with other people, your supervisors. So I think that's how you're going to develop a really good application. When we're looking at applications, we tend to look a lot at the proposal of research and what you said about your abilities as a student from your past academic record. Those are the key things we're looking at. And so just had a few kind of tips. Make sure that you sell yourself in your application form, bring out all the good things that you've done. Don't forget those small things that it's easy to forget on an application form, all the good things you've done. Make sure you mention them. And as regards writing the proposal, again, I emphasise, I think it's about talking to potential supervisors and developing a good proposal at an early stage. But the proposal is one of the key things we evaluate when we're looking at an application. So do read our guidelines, which are on the website. It's important to emphasise the research methods are appropriate and sort of well thought through. That's something that quite often people don't do as well as they could do. Make sure you write everything in your own words. And I think, again, to emphasise, well, it's not easy to write a good proposal. You won't probably have this brilliant, world-shattering original idea from the very beginning. Over time, you need to develop that. So it's about staying in touch with us and talking to us through the whole process. That's what I would emphasise. So just before we go on to the Q&A session, I just remind you that we've got a URL which gives you details of how to apply, something about doing it, the proposal, and also details of scholarships that we're aware of. So I think that's the end of the presentation. And so we'll just have a slight pause and then we'll go on to the question and answer session. Okay, so I think just feel free to, whatever questions you have, it doesn't matter how simple or naive or whatever, we're just happy to answer any questions. And we've got Titima and Jess here to give the student perspective. I suppose while we're waiting, we could discuss something. Could we? Does that make sense? I'll make up my own question. So what do you think? I mean, I'm quite interested to know your perspective on what's the main challenges an international student coming to the UK. What did you find the most challenging things?
From my perspective, I think the most challenge for most international students, including including me, is about the English skill,
Right, okay.
especially about the academic writing.
Right.
Actually, I graduated a master degree from the information school as well, but I think there are difference between the PhD and the master degree, because in the PhD you have to spend a lot of your time with the writing your thesis. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy for, I think it's not easy for the international student to write the proper the how to write and to make the reader enjoy with your writing. I think it's not easy for most international students. Yes.
And what sort of support? I know the support there is, the university does provide some support. Have you drawn on that?
Yes, the university provides the module about writing the thesis, about the practice English skill, including communication, speaking, writing, especially writing the thesis, and also supervisor also help the PhD student. They're gonna advise you how to write the thesis. Yes.
Okay, that's brilliant. So we've got a couple of questions there, so we might as well try and answer this. So the first question we've got there is basically saying, what do I need to put in my research proposal? So maybe I'll give a quick answer from my perspective, and maybe. So from my perspective, I think have a nice title that sounds interesting, engages the reader, makes that, but it's actually kind of descriptive of what you want to investigate. So a good title is a good starting point. You want very clear aim for the whole project, probably a single aim, and objectives and research questions that break that down into something practical to do. You want a bit of explanation of why it's a really important topic to investigate. So that would probably draw on the literature, plus some sort of up-to-date literature review relating to your area. And finally, I think a key thing that I think often students neglect in their applications is like really good plan of research design, what methods they want to use to collect data, how they're going to analyse. It's not that this proposal is set in stone, far from it. I think throughout your first year, in fact through the whole study, you'll be changing the exact focus over time. But you need a really good starting point, and it is a key part of how we evaluate applicants. Jess, any thoughts about writing a proposal? Was it an easy process for you? Or?
I mean, I think as you said before, I did work very closely with the person who is now my supervisor. So I would really say if you've got an idea and you're interested, then don't hesitate getting in touch with one. I mean, for me, it was easy because I did my master's in the school, so I knew who I could approach. But if you don't, you can go and search on, sort of find someone with your research interest. So have a look, email them with your ideas, and then I think it's really working together to put in a good proposal, because I'd never written a research proposal before. I didn't know what a research proposal was about. So obviously you need to come in and you need to show you've done the reading, you've got the raw ideas, but if you can work together, I think that's the main thing. And the other thing is my research now is quite different from my research proposal, which I think is absolutely normal. So you don't have to, what you write there is just kind of showing you've got the idea and you've got the kind of ability. So yeah, it's not set in stone.
Can I just add quickly to that? So if you look on our website, there's details of all the staff in the different research groups, what their interests are. That should help you identify a suitable person. We've also got a new page we just created recently of topics that you could potentially develop into PhDs. So you can look through those, and if something sparks an interest with you, you can kind of start thinking about that, and then there's an academic who's suggested that idea that you could contact. So definitely talking to a supervisor at an early point sounds like a good idea. Any thoughts?
Okay, from my perspective, I think you have to show the clear gap from the existing literature. So why you have to do this project? Because they have some gaps from the existing publication, and you should show the clear research aim and research objectives, because this aim and objective gonna be the direction for doing your project. But as Dr. Andrew mentioned, in the first year we may develop our research proposal.
So we've got a few questions now. One of the questions from Martin there says, should I contact an academic about my application? So we've kind of answered that already. Definitely you should do that. So we really recommend that, as well as copying in the departmental research administrator who keeps track of all our applications as well. That's a good idea. And then we've got the next question is about, are there required models in the first year, and are they pass-fail types? So I guess what you're trying to ask there is there a particular expectation of what you're going to do in the first year? I'm guessing that's what you mean. You might want to clarify your question if I'm answering the wrong question. But I think, on the whole, what people tend to do in the very first year is literature review and methodology. And then at the end of that first year, we have something we call a confirmation review, which is basically an opportunity to present a shortish report, about 10,000 words report, to say this is what my work is going to be. It's reviewed by a couple of academics in the department, and they give feedback on that report. Yes, it is a kind of pass-fail or pass, resubmit or fail type process, but you should get a lot of support over that first year to write that first year review. It's a check for both sides. It's a check for you that you're on course to do something that's really going to work, and to get some really positive feedback and present your ideas to other people and get in a kind of structured way some feedback. It is possible to fail, but on the whole what tends to happen is you pass and then carry on for the rest of the study, or you get some feedback that you've got to address, and then we review how well you've responded to that. So I see from what you've typed there, I am answering the right question.
But there are also the taught modules that you do during the first year.
Yes.
It might be, I don't know if it's those so during the first year there are modules you need to take in quantitative methods, qualitative research methods, research ethics, and research theories, so about kind of different research paradigms. You have to attend them, but they're normally without assessment, so it's not a question of pass-fail, it's just a question of building up your skills as a researcher. So even if your PhD is going to be purely quantitative, you still do the qualitative methods. So at the end of your degree, you end up as a sort of fully rounded researcher. And they are useful modules to do.
Does university ask the student to attend the research ethics module, because it's very useful when you're gonna collect your data in the field. So you have to get some idea and concept about how you handle with your participants. Yes.
So we've got another question there now. Somebody's saying that they've got a master's degree from the United States, and it was kind of a taught course with no kind of dissertation at the end. I guess that's what I mean. You can definitely still apply. Our PhDs are different from American ones, which their PhDs as well as their master courses are longer and they have more taught element. Our PhD is basically through doing a research project, but that doesn't prohibit you applying in any way. So I think we've answered a few questions there. Any more questions? We're delighted to answer any of your questions. Is there anything else you think, how long will it take to process my application? Well, we try and turn around applications as soon as we can. I can tell you a bit about the process in the background that might help you to kind of imagine what happens. So when you apply, you would apply with quite a lot of documents like your actual proposal, but also evidence of having various academic qualifications and English language qualifications, and so forth. Once we've kind of looked at that and it shows it passes at a certain level, then we've got a working group that looks at proposals, and if you've identified a potential supervisor or supervisor, then it goes to them to evaluate your application. If they're interested in it, then they'll probably invite you to an interview. This isn't like really, not sort of a test, but it's more like to have a discussion to see what your motivation to do a PhD is, to make sure that you understand what a PhD really involves, to discuss your proposal and maybe suggest improvements. And then, depending on the outcome of that interview, then we'll probably be able to start thinking about making you an offer. Process doesn't have to take too long, it can be pretty quick. I don't think we can guarantee that it will be very prompt, because of course we've also got lots of other issues to do with visa application and so forth, but our turnaround processes should take less than 3 months. I think that would be fair to say, and we have often done it much quicker than that. Great, thank you. I was just going back to the previous question about the first year. I was wondering, from the student perspective, are there other things you think you do in that first year? So you've got just work on literature review, writing methodology, just going on the courses as supply. Are there any other things you think are really important about getting used to how Sheffield works? Or
I think for the first year is mainly focus on develop your proposal.
yeah.
How to make it more clear. Yes.
Yeah, so it's expanding on your proposal basically. It's like building up more literature and finding that gap that you were talking about, and strengthening the methodology, really thinking it through on a practical level. And maybe also thinking about ethics issues. But you should also be, because you're doing the courses about research methods, you're probably refining your understanding of how to do a questionnaire, how to do interviews, or ethnography, or what to do. So.
I think it's also quite important to make some friends and find some people with similar research interests to you, and go to as much stuff as you can, because during your first year you have a bit more time, I think. And you go to stuff that might not be relevant because you don't exactly know where you're going to be by the end of the third year. So if you use that first year to go and meet some like-minded people, go to as much as possible, then that will really kind of help you in year 2, 3 and 4 when it all gets a bit more stressful and difficult, because you've got that support network to pull on. So I think building up your social networks is really useful in the first year.
And I would like to add something from Jessica. The school have their research groups, so I think for the new PhD student, it's a good chance that the school have the research group, because in the research group have their lecturer and academic staff in the school, and have the other PhD student. They have many PhD students from each year, so it's good for you to ask your question, share your experience, and ask the question that you have about doing PhD with the other PhD students, including academic staff member in the research groups.
That's really helpful. So we don't seem to have any more questions, so that's fine, but what we might do is just close on one final sort of piece of advice. Is that, I'm putting you on the spot slightly because we haven't really practice this, but what do you think? One final piece of advice for people who are thinking about doing a PhD. Anything you'd like to say?
I would like to share my experience about being a PhD student, especially international student. I think it's not easy to do a PhD in one place that's very far from your motherland, because doing a PhD, as I mentioned, is not about the intellectual challenge, but it also have the emotional challenge. Sometimes you may feel tired and upset with your thesis. You may need your family member to support you, but once you decide to study in a board, it's not easy to handle that. But don't worry about that because the school have the supervisor. They will advise you, they will support you, and they also have their other PhD students. They have the experience to share with you. And I think doing a PhD is a very good opportunity because it's gonna challenge you how you can find out and how you can answer the research question. It's not about doing a PhD in 3 or 4 years, but it's about after finish the PhD. During 3 to 4 years, they will practice you how to do a research. Well, will practice you how to be a researcher. Yeah.
Okay, that's good, thank you. Do you have a kind of final thought?
I think that PhD students are normal people, basically. You don't have to be some kind of superhuman with this incredible, enormous brain. You just have to be a person who is really interested in something. So don't worry, am I clever enough? I'm not going to be clever enough. I'm going to get there and everyone else is going to be brilliant and amazing. I don't think you need to think about it like that. I think you need to think, am I actually interested and obsessive enough to spend 3 to 4 years thinking about my topic?
Okay, so we've got one more question before I give my sort of final tip. We just answer that question that's come up on the chat, which is basically, should I contact my potential supervisor before I apply, or should I apply directly? I would say, I mean, you can do both. You can just apply through the website. I think it's probably quite a good idea to look through potential supervisors, try and identify somebody you might want to work with and contact them with the beginnings of your idea. I think that is really quite a good idea. But either approach will work. Ultimately, you will be directed to appropriate supervisors through either route. So, okay, so I said so what's my last tip? So I suppose, thinking back to my own experience, which I have kind of referred to already, it's like, yeah, I thought about doing a PhD for at least 10 years. Then something happened, I couldn't go on with what I was doing at that time, and it just, I went out of my way to get that PhD slot that I hadn't tried to before. I realised afterwards, well, why didn't I do that much earlier? I think I was looking around for like this brilliant, magical, fantastic new idea that would be utterly brilliant. But in fact, I just needed a solid interest in the subject, and I could develop something good from that sort of starting point, rather than having that ready-made from the very beginning. So that would be my piece of advice. If you think you want to do a PhD, really go after it and pursue that dream.